Hey, right, if I've done this right, you've received this video a little bit later than my February Loot unboxing, but I'm currently filming these back to back. It is peeing down with rain outside, so the lighting is terrible. This is why I look, well, who cares? Anyway, this video is my mid-month wrap-up because I've been so bad at doing end-of-the-month wrap-ups and TBRs and all that, which, you know, if you want to know all that stuff, go to my blog, go to my Goodreads, see what I'm reading. This is fine, but I thought you might be interested to see what I've managed to read so far this month. Now, before you sit there and go, oh my gosh, she's lying, or that's so unrealistic, or oh my gosh, I can never read all those books, do please remember, I sit on a bus for 40 minutes twice a day. So that's 40 minutes solid reading I get to do twice for 5 days out of the week. I also read for at least a quarter of an hour during the book club that I run with the students at school. And if I ever get a late bus, I can be reading for up to 20 minutes waiting for a bus. So I get a lot of reading time in. So don't berate yourself. Don't be jealous. This is just the way my life rolls at the moment. The weekends, I'm rubbish. Sitting down and reading, it doesn't tend to happen. So, you know, I make up for it. So, first up, A Throne of Swans. This is by Elizabeth and Catherine Core. It is a YA fantasy where we have the elitist nobles who can turn into birds. They are shapeshifters. But in this world there is lies, there is secrets, there is political intrigue, and there is murder in spades. We follow Aderin, whose father has just died. She can't shift and turn into a swan. She's the last of the swans and she can't do it. And if the king on the throne discovers this, he will either exile her or mutilate her, which is pretty horrific. In fact, it's so horrific you don't tend to survive this sort of thing. So she's desperately trying to prove herself. She's also wanted to find out who murdered her mother and attacked her when she was younger. And so she's finding out the secrets that's going on in this court, and finds out that actually the court's really corrupt, as most courts in fantasy worlds are. I was pleasantly surprised by this. Lots of people have been raving about it at Yauk last summer. Obviously the arcs you couldn't get your hands on, they'd gone. But to actually enjoy this without all that hype, it was on the buy one get one half price table at Waterland, so I picked it up. And I actually really liked it. I like the concept of the nobles being able to shift. I was a little unclear about why it was only the nobles who could do this and not everybody. Certainly the corruption within the world and the court, it's not new, but it was refreshing to see actually someone trying to tackle it and realising you can't tackle it. You've got to pick the lesser of two evils. I really quite liked my lead characters in here. There was a slight romance going on. It could have been a romance triangle, but it wasn't, which was quite refreshing. It was just the way it unfolded was really, it was nice. It was nice to read. So yeah, a good solid fantasy story. It's apparently the first of a series, so I'm interested to see where this goes. Chosen by Kirsten White. This is the sequel to Slayer, which is up there somewhere with all my Buffy books. This is set after the TV series is finished and about halfway through the comics run, which continue the story on. So magic has been destroyed. Buffy had to destroy the seed of all magic. So the portals to other dimensions and the hell dimensions has been closed. Vampires no longer sire other vampires. They basically turn them into zompires. They become vampire zombies. So vampires are not pretty cool at the moment. They're not happy with the status quo. Demons who are in our world are now trapped here. So that's causing a whole load of aggro. The Watchers Council has been destroyed. Buffy has done away with the whole system. And we have loads of Slayers, because obviously at the end of the original TV series, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, please go and watch Buffy. But there are now loads of Slayers because of what Buffy did at the end of the TV series. This follows Nina, who has accepted her role as a Slayer, but she's still trying to find out her place, who she is, because obviously she trained as a Watcher, she's now a Slayer, so she sort of crosses over the two boundaries and the two worlds, and she's trying to find her feet while also trying to understand why her sisters left her. And in the meantime, there's this prophecy also happening that potentially could destroy the whole world. again. So I really like this. There was a lot of pop culture references. It felt like a Buffy novel without Buffy in it. There are lots of references and nods to the original show, to the original characters, and also to the comics as well, which is what I quite like about this book series. It is doing that difficult job of spanning the TV series and the comic series, which officially carry on the storyline. You know, this is where Joss Whedon has taken it. And while I might not agree with all his choices in the comics, I do like what has happened, where certain characters have developed to what's happened to them. So it's nice and refreshing to see the Buffyverse from a completely new character's point of view who's just been thrown into this world. So if you're a Buffy fan and you want a bit of nostalgia, I recommend this series to you. If you're new to the series, you can get in there because there is enough to keep you going, to fill you in with what's been happening. So you don't need to know all the history that's happened. You don't need to have read all the comics to get what's going on. But I think you do benefit from being more aware of it than completely new. So we go, but very, very enjoyable. Dragon Pearl, this is by Yoon Han Lee. This is an Own Voices Korean sci-fi story with spirit foxes. And it's basically an adventure story where a sister is trying to save her brother and prove that he is innocent from a crime he's been committed of. I really enjoyed this. It's certainly for the 8 to 12 category or middle grade if you're in America. I liked the way the Korean mythology and the spirit world was brought into a sci-fi setting. That's something a little bit new to me. It certainly helped having read Wicked Fox last year, which was probably my first foray into Korean mythology. So I had that as a background, some understanding of fox spirits and that. That really helped with reading Dragon Pearl and getting how the spirits intertwine and intermix with the world, but also having it as a sci-fi setting was really sort of novel in a way. It was kind of cool. So there we go. Min is our lead character in this. She is a 13-year-old fox spirit who's been told to hide who she is all her life because obviously foxes are considered tricksters and unreliable. So foxes tend to hide who they are for obvious reasons. But she sets out to find her brother and prove that he is innocent of the crime he's been committed. I really liked her. She was impulsive, very much a 13-year-old kid just trying to do the right thing but not quite thinking things through all the time. She was certainly lucky with some of the things that happened to her. She just happened to fall on her feet a few times, but then it's an 8 to 12 year book. So, you know, I kind of expect a little bit of leeway, a little bit of, oh yeah, that was convenient. But I really did like how this book didn't shy away from things like friendship and loyalty and death and loss. I think it handles those subjects really, really well. And certainly it does leave you sort of, oh, you know, that's quite poignant. Or yeah, you know, how do we react to these things? I highly recommend this. I also managed to read The Secret Chapter by Genevieve Cogman, which is book 6, I think, in the Invisible Library series, which I really, really love. This one is the heist story. So our leads, Irene and Kai, basically get caught up in having to steal a piece of artwork so they can get a book for the library that will save a world that Irene grew up on. If you've not read the Invisible Library series, it's very witty, very amusing, very British. But the Invisible Library itself is a library that spans all worlds, all alternative worlds. And these worlds vary from high chaos, where the fairies dominate, to high order, where the dragons dominate. And then there's all variations in the middle, where fairies dominate. Humans tend to adapt to a stereotype. They fit a role to play in the fairy story. Where if the dragons dominate, you tend to have a high technological world with very strict lines of how things are run. And the library's job is to keep these worlds stable. You are balancing the chaos with the order to keep the world stable. And to do that, you steal books, basically, from various worlds to make balance. It's quite fun, actually, if you like libraries and books and harebrained ideas and schemes. Highly recommended series. The last novel I have read so far this month is Waterland by Graham Swift. This was recommended to me by my boss. after I sort of said I wasn't sure how I felt about Wuthering Heights. This is a century-spanning, almost waffling family-ish saga of life in the Fens. It basically pivots around 1943 when a body is pulled out of the river next to Henry Crick. It's a teenager he knows, and events kind of spiral out from that point. But the way this story is told, it's told by an older Henry to his history class, and it's a bit all over the place. The reviews on Goodreads suggest that this book is about the Fens, eels, and incest. And there are some seriously unsettling passages in this book that is like, ew. And that's not just the incest, you know, some of the descriptions of the eel is pretty ew. I think it's a little bit more than eels and incest, but certainly this book goes all over the place. At times I really liked it, and at other times I was like, why am I still reading this? Oh, I'm trapped on a bus for another 20 minutes, so I might as well carry on reading it, kind of thing. So I don't think I would have kept reading this if I'd not been trapped on a bus to read it, if that makes sense to you. I'm glad I did read it because it's really it's very philosophical about history and time and how people change or don't change, I think. But at other times it's like, I just want the story. I just want to be told from A to B this family saga, this history. But then he goes off and tells me something else about the building of the rivers and the locks system in the Fens and draining the Fens and then the Fens flooding and draining the Fens again. Or it tells me this, you know, the eel cycle and how eels reproduce and how they figured out how eels reproduce. And I was like, it just kept going off on weird tangents that, yeah, were related to what the main bit of the story was at that time. But it was just like, well, we're going to go over here for a couple of pages, but then we'll meander back. And we'll pick up the story at another point and meander off this way, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up the story again and we'll meander off that way. It really is not a linear timeline by any stretch of the imagination. The narrator, I would say, is certainly a bit all over the place. Possibly an unreliable one because everything's from his point of view or from what he's learnt later on, but he's telling it at the time it happened. But it's obviously being told to his class in the 1980s, and yeah, give it a go if you want a great history of the Fens and eels and a bit of incest in your story, and you want to know a story about families and how they can screw each other up, and superstition. But if you want a straightforward A to B family saga, this is not it. This is slippery. Some of you who might notice on Twitter where I've been posting each time I finish a book, I've been going through a bit of a Buffy kick at the moment. I can't think why. So the new rebooted Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic series. So this is High School is Hell. I've got them as comic form at the moment, so I've got volumes 1 to 7 here, which I have read, which is pretty cool, but I have a varying degree of covers. Quite nice. Awesome episode. Another great episode. This is a Joss Whedon rebooting, updating Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it's set in the present day. All the characters are there, but not necessarily as you quite remember them or in the order that we meet them. Spike and Drusilla and Anya are introduced very, very early on, as opposed to quite a bit later. Angel is almost non-existent, which is certainly interesting. Buffy's a lot more, I think she's a little bit more shrewder than in the original show. I like what they've done with Willow. They've made her a lot more confident. She's a lot more sure of herself, and she's openly out as a lesbian, and she's in a relationship, and that is cool, and Cordy's fine with that. And it's kind of nice to see Willow not have to fight to find her identity, that the fact that she knows who she is and she's happy with it. And she, at this point, is she a practicing witch at this point? No, I'm mixing that up. But she's confident and she's happy with who she is. And then Xander, I have conflicting issues with, because in the original TV show he's kind of portrayed as like this wimpy teenage mate that you all know, but you know, he's only hanging out with you because he's known you for so long. Whereas in this series they've kind of made him like this, he's almost, I would say, almost depressive character. He's really lacking in confidence. He's not sure of himself. He does this blog. I don't know. I mean, there's this great panel where him and Will are all kitted out, ready to help Buffy fight vampires very, very early on. But they've got the gear, they've gone for it, as you know most people would in this day and age when they cosplay. They do the proper vampire get up with the leather and the, you know, the straps with all your stakes in it, and the crossbow and the big coats and everything. Whereas obviously in the TV show it was kind of like, what have I got in my bag, and I'm in denim and, you know, dungarees and all that, and I'm just sort of doing my best. So I kind of like that they've beefed up these characters a bit more to be actively involved in Buffy's life. But at the same time, I'm not quite happy with what they've done with Xander. I think he's become almost a plot device for certain things that happen. So I'll have to see how that progresses a bit further on now. But apart from that, I'm quite liking the reboot series. Just consider it, particularly if you know the old Buffy, just consider it as a, you know, this is an alternative universe, and go from there. I've also been reading some of the original Dark Horse graphic novels. So I have here Uninvited Guests, which I think is this one short stories. Yeah, this one's short stories, which is very, very cool. I like some of the artwork in here. Some of it's a bit sort of, I don't remember Sarah Michelle Gellar being that large, but there we go. Ring of Fire, which is absolutely gorgeous. This is one complete story in its own right, and the artwork in this is pretty spectacular. Very cool. And then Play with Fire, which is again another short story collection. This is quite fun, but because of the nature of the short stories, not everything is wrapped up very neatly, which is a shame, but you know, I quite like them. These comics are meant to fit in at some point within the original show, so they're designed to fit around certain aspects or themes that are going on at that particular time. Certainly Ring of Fire is set after Angelus comes back, and events that happen from there, so there's a lot of darkness and brooding and loss going on, whereas Play with Fire is a bit more all over the place and it's a lot more lighter in tone. So that's the beauty of these graphic novels. You never quite know what you're going to get inside, what tone you're going to get, what stories you're going to get, but you know you're going to get something that's going to be part of the Buffyverse. So that's my mid-month wrap-up so far. If there's anything else I've missed, it will be on my Goodreads list. So, you know, link down below, as is my social media and my book blog, which has various ramblings from me and possibly a few reviews. If you're missing anything, you want more details or just, you know, more stuff, feel free. Let me know what you've been reading this month down below, please. That would be really nice. Any recommendations that I should be reading. As always, there's a link to a small booktuber in the description box. Please go and check them out and share the booktuber. For now, that's it. So thank you very much for watching and happy reading. Bye.